How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today, I've got something very special for you. Even though it's freezing outside and very windy, I can't wait to show you what I've got to review for us today. But before I get into that, if you're new to the channel, my name is Yosef. I have 3 kids. I happen to be a car enthusiast, and I used to sell cars in the past. So if you're interested in my perspective, please consider subscribing. All right, now on with the video. So today, I wanted to make this video to answer a very, very important question that I'm sure literally nobody has asked, but today we're going to answer it anyways, and that is, what do you do if you have $165,000 or $170,000 to spend and you want a vehicle that nobody else has, that looks like nothing else on the road, but can go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.6 seconds and has 845 horsepower? Well, until now, you've been stuck. There was nothing else like that you could buy that fits all those criteria until today. And today, we have with us the brand new, not just Cybertruck, but the Cyberbeast. And I am so excited to walk you through all of the details of this thing, take you for a drive, because this not only has been probably the most influential car or vehicle, I should say, in the automotive world in the last couple of years, but it's also been the most controversial one. And I can't wait to get your thoughts on this as I walk you through everything. So if you're ready, let's go. Now, before we get into the review, I have to give a massive shout out to all the folks at KM Capital. They are an amazing group of people, and if it weren't for them, we would not have this Cybertruck to review today. So truly, truly thankful to them. And in case you're interested, KM Capital is a wonderful organization that helps out local businesses in terms of financial support. So if you are somebody who runs a small to medium-sized business and is looking for that support, feel free to give them a shout. Let them know that we sent you, and that'll be a great opportunity to thank them for this video. So thank you again to KM Capital and the team there. Now on with the video. So let's talk about the styling here, because this is probably the most controversial part of the Cybertruck or the Cyberbeast. And to be honest with you, it's a love it or hate it look. I am not a huge fan of the way it looks, but it's a giant triangle, and I think it looks interesting, and it definitely grabs people's attention. But the thing that's most exciting about it, and to me is very interesting, is the fact that it doesn't use conventional steel. It's a very, very different process to build this car, and I think what they've done for the automotive industry with this is just show the art of what's possible. It's thinking outside the box. It's getting creative, doing something that nobody else has done before. And that to me is so exciting and so interesting. And if you take a look at it, it's got a lot of very sharp angles. And that's been something that a lot of people have covered. It's a little sharp. It's something that could probably cut your finger off if you put it in the wrong space. But it is very cool to look at, and it definitely has presence. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is the daytime running light is actually this giant light bar that goes across the front end, and the headlights are down here. And to me, that was a very interesting thing for Tesla to do because, well, you've got basically this parcel shelf, which is the bumper over here, and it's very easy for stuff to get piled up in there and block those beautiful headlights that are super bright, by the way. And especially here in Canada where we've got snow and ice in the winter, all you need is a little junk to be thrown in there as you're driving along, or snow to pile up, and then you won't have anything to see in front of you, which is kind of an odd design. But I did want to just bring you a little closer to the points here. You can see just how sharp they are. And it's very interesting that Tesla was able to even do this because of, pedestrian safety and all of that kind of stuff. I wonder how that works if you get into an accident. So one other thing to mention on the front of the vehicle here is just the sheer size of this window. It is absolutely enormous, and it's crazy that it just kind of slopes up from the front of the vehicle all the way up to the top, and it's one giant piece of glass. And then you've got this enormous windshield wiper, which is probably about 4 feet in length. It's unbelievable how big this is, and I believe it's the largest windshield wiper ever to be fitted on any vehicle ever. And it's pretty amazing to look at this thing because when you're up close and personal with it, I mean, just the sheer size of the Cybertruck is incredible. It really makes anything else on the road look tiny next to it. But if we take a look at the side profile of the Cybertruck, you've got this really interesting sort of triangular point at the top where everything meets. And to me, it's very interesting because if you look at the mirror design, it sort of mimics the shape and the design of the Cybertruck, which I think is really cool and a nice little touch. You also have these very large windows in the front over here to help with the blind spots, because you can see the front windshield is incredibly raked and it goes really far forward. So you need that extra tiny little window in the front just to help you see around you when you're making turns. And looking at the wheels and tires, absolutely enormous. And of course, this thing is air suspension, so you can raise and lower it as you go, but you've got these really giant wheels and these aero covers that cover the rims so that you maximize your efficiency. But I can only imagine what it's like to go off-road in something like this. It's probably just an unbelievable experience. Now, to get into the Cybertruck, you don't have conventional door handles, and a lot of people are probably wondering, well, how do you get in? Is there some sensor or something that you have to press? And the answer is right up here on the B pillar, you've got this button. It's actually a physical button, and you press it and the door just kind of pops open, which is very cool. And I was wondering, what is the mechanism that pops the door open? And if we take a look very quickly, you'll notice there's a piece of plastic that gets pushed out over here, and that's what pops the door out. So you can't get your finger stuck in there if you accidentally open it and you stick your finger in there, which is kind of a neat and very cool thing that they had to engineer with the way they designed these doors. But we're not going to get into the Cybertruck yet because I want to bring you to the back end of it. Now, taking a look at the tailgate and the back end of the Cybertruck, you'll notice everything again shares those same geometric, very simple line design. But the cool thing is you've got this enormous tailgate and you've got the tonneau cover that's closed right now, that's power operated, and it's apparently super strong. You can jump on it and it won't break, which is very cool. So you don't have to worry about people stealing your stuff. And you'll notice they've got buttons over here just on the side of the tailgate that allow you to open up the tailgate and slide that tonneau cover open. And I'll show you really quickly so you can get a sense for how that looks. And if we open the bed, you'll notice it's not power operated, but it is damped really nicely. And taking a look at the bed of the Cybertruck, you do have a giant space back here, and you've got these LED lights that line the back of the truck here, which is very interesting. And back here, you've got a lot of charge ports, so if you wanted to plug in any household type appliances, or you're on a job site and you want to plug in your table saw and things like that, you've got a ton of room over there to do that. You've got a few tie downs over here, but otherwise nothing super exciting back here in the bed of the Cybertruck, other than the fact that you've got a very flat loading space and you don't have any sort of indents or things like that for the wheels, which I found to be kind of interesting. One last thought, as you look at the tonneau cover kind of going into its spot, it actually rolls into its own little section back there, which is very cool. And when it's closed completely, you actually have no rear window. So you have to use a camera system, which I'll show you shortly, that allows you to see out the back. And because this is a Tesla, it's riddled with all of these cameras everywhere and sensors, which add to the driving experience and allow you to see all around the vehicle as you're driving around, which is very cool. And I will just mention one last thing before we go into the Cybertruck. The taillights are these little squares over here. You've got one on this side, you've got another one on that side, and then you've got a little bit of a light bar for the third brake light, which is very cool. And the reverse lights are actually down here in those sections next to the license plate, which is pretty interesting. All right, moving inside of the Cyberbeast, we just press that button again, the door gets presented to you, you open it up, and you're greeted with a very simple design door card. However, it is interesting to note that you've got a rimless design around the windows, which is very cool. That's usually reserved for sports cars, but we've got it here in the Cyberbeast, and I really like the simplicity of it. I'm not a huge fan generally of not having any buttons or any design, but it is really nice to have the white over here, very soft touch materials. You've got your buttons for opening and closing the windows, which is very nice to have. They've even done a better job than Volkswagen with the ID.4. Instead of having 2 buttons to open all 4 windows, here you've got 4 dedicated buttons. And of course, to open and close the door, you press that button, it allows you to open the door, and you've got an emergency release over here as well if that doesn't work. But otherwise, very, very simple design. You've got some cup holders over here, you've got a speaker grate, and then you've got, of course, the Cybertruck plate, which is welded and looks very interesting and cool. And when we take a look at the pedals, you also have a very nice set of aluminum throttle and brake pedal, which is cool. Now, the rest of the interior is very open and sort of follows that same simplistic design. Now, taking a look at the seats, they've done a really nice job with them. They look very plush and nice, and I love the built-in headrest. It just looks so cool, and you've got these piping and stitching and all these little details going on. Very nice bolsters, hugs you in place, which you need when you're going from 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. And I do like the fact that we've got the seat controls over here. Really well done with Tesla there, instead of integrating absolutely everything into the screen. I like that we have that. And the seat design is also really interesting. It's sort of levitating a little bit from the floor, and it's not sitting on normal rails, which is kind of cool. And when you just take a look at the general interior, it's all very open and very simple, and there are no physical buttons outside of what you've got on the steering wheel and on the door. So let's climb in, let's take a look at everything that we've got. Now, taking a look at the steering wheel, it is very cool and unique. You won't see this in any other type of vehicle other than a Tesla. It's like they've taken the yoke and they've just added a top part on it. But I have to say, driving this thing around for a little bit, it's actually very comfortable. Your hand fits very nicely over here, and it's very easy to use. The only thing that I think is probably a little confusing for most people is the fact that there are no stocks. So everything has to be done over here. You've got your turn signals, and these sort of scroll wheels and dials are the only way that you can adjust volume and make changes to your mirrors and your steering wheel settings and all of that kind of stuff. They actually change functions as you go into the different menus. But other than that, very cool, very simple looking steering wheel. And you've got, of course, the silhouette of the Cybertruck or the Cyberbeast there on the horn button, which I find to be really awesome. Other than that, you have no gauge cluster, there's no heads-up display, there's nothing to show you speed or anything else other than this enormous screen. Now, the only way to drive this vehicle is actually using this enormous screen. So when you put your key card over there, you set up your phone, you're all set to go, and you'll see there's a little slider up here that you just bring forwards or backwards, and that allows you to put the car in drive essentially, or reverse, and you just press on it, and then you're in park. Other than that, there's a lot of really cool stuff that we need to talk about in this infotainment system. Now, it's a lot to soak in. It took me a while to get to know everything, but it's very cool that you have all this functionality built in. The only downside is everything, and I mean everything has to be done through this. So if you see here, you can open up the tonneau cover, you can change the ride height, you can fold the mirrors, you can adjust the mirrors from here, the steering wheel, change the settings for being up and down or a little closer to you, change the headlight system and all of that. Even the glove box, there's a button that you have to press to open, and it's kind of like a shelf that's presented to you, which is kind of cool. So everything, and I mean everything, is done through here. But having said that, there's a lot of really cool stuff. So of course, this menu over here brings up all of the different options for the driving. You can choose whether you want it in the normal comfort mode or the beast mode with all the power. And you can change all the regenerative braking and all the stuff like that in here. But there are a few things that I thought might be really interesting to show you. Number one, you've got a seat menu here. So this is where you get your heated seats. And of course, you've got heated seats in the back as well, which is really awesome. And cool seats, I should say, ventilated seats in the front. You also have a lot of different settings that you can do for the screen. So if you wanted to have it brighter or darker, you can do that. But there is also a button over here that brings up, we'll call it the toolbox, and some of the toys. And there are a few things in here that I think are really cool. Number one, every car has a horn, but in this car, you can replace the horn sound with something else. And I'm gonna play some of those sounds for you now. And this is one of the nice things. Elon Musk has a great sense of humor for putting this in here.
Toss a coin to your way. Well, I never.
One of the things that I find to be really fun is you've got this fart button that you can use. So if you put that on, anytime you press the left scroll wheel, which is the one over here, it'll make a farting sound. And you can make that sound come from anywhere in the car. So if you've got a passenger that's sitting over here and you want to make that sound come from there or from the back, you can do that, which is really fun. And if you wanted to just sit and relax, you've got a fireplace that you can set up, or a sketch pad, or you can even pretend like you're driving on Mars instead of using the normal navigation system. And if we bring up this little box here as well, you'll notice that you've got a whole bunch of other things. The camera system, of course, navigation, there's a dash cam built in here, the heated steering wheel, but you also have an arcade. So if you wanted to play games, you can do that while you're sitting and hanging out in your Cybertruck. You can also watch movies and things like that from here. There's a theater, and you can watch YouTube, so you can even bring up your favorite automotive YouTuber. Other than that, on this little taskbar at the bottom, you'll notice you've got a dedicated button here for the climate control, so you can choose where you get the air coming from, the defroster here, and the heated mirrors. It's nice that even though everything is built into the screen here, you still always have these dedicated buttons at the bottom for the navigation, make phone calls, for Spotify, Bluetooth, your entertainment, but also for the climate controls. So it's not terrible. It's still something that you need to get used to, but it's not the worst system in the world. And of course, the Cybertruck also has a really amazing camera system, which not only can be just regular static sort of cameras that you use, but you can also use this if you wanted to record as a dash cam instead of having to buy your own and integrate it into the car, which is very cool. And it's got a sentry mode too, so if you leave the car and somebody comes up to you and decides to ding it, which of course you can't really ding the Cybertruck, but if they did or tried to, you could record that over here as well. And there's even a little washer, which is cool, just to clean the front camera, so you can always make sure that you can see where you're going. So really well done on the camera system. It would be nice to have one of those 360 cameras that sort of lets you see the Cybertruck in third person. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but otherwise you do have a very cool camera system here. And I really like the way they've done the graphics in here. It's so cool to have this giant screen and you can move around the Cybertruck and see all the different angles of it, but you can also do different things from here. You can open up the tonneau cover, you can open up the tailgate and all these sorts of things, which is very interesting. So lots to do in the infotainment system. That's probably all I want to cover for today, but other than that, you'll notice that the interior of the car is very simple. You've got a rimless rear view mirror, which is probably the most useless thing in the world because of course you can't see anything back there. You've got the tonneau cover covering everything, and there's nothing else up here. There's no sunglass holder. You've got your emergency hazard lights up there. You've got this sun visor that folds down and is magnetic. You'll notice it's covered over there, but if you just slide it out, you can use it like a regular one, or you can put it back and you've got a really cool magnet that clips it in over there. And you'll notice it's very small until you open up this other flap, and you also have a little vanity mirror up there too, and everything is magnetic and it feels really nice because it's covered in this Alcantara feeling material. So it's very nice and premium feeling. Even the roof and the headliner are all covered in this Alcantara material, so it feels very posh and premium. And the whole sort of section over here for the front dashboard is also covered in that nice Alcantara material with some stitching. You've got a piece of metal over there that hides the air vents, which looks very cool. And you've got a little strip of LED for some ambient lighting as well. And they've integrated all of the speakers in the A-pillars as well. So it sort of clears up the entire center area, which is very nice. But the one thing that's very interesting is just how big this window is. I mean, you just look down and it's a far ways away. I couldn't even reach if I tried. It's pretty crazy to see that. And that definitely affects the way that you drive and perceive the vehicle on the road. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go for our drive, but very simple in here. The only thing that I'll mention is you also have the cup holders here. You've got a ton of space. It's all sort of open. You can put storage there, or a bag or a purse or something like that. These are wireless chargers for your phone. And of course, if we lift this up, you also have quite a bit of storage in here and some other charge ports. So very practical with the inside of the Cybertruck. And if we take a look back here, the entire roof is this one giant glass piece, which is very interesting and lets it feel incredibly spacious and airy in here, which I really like. All right, now let's move to the back. Now getting into the back seat area of the Cyberbeast, same thing, you just press that button, the door opens or is presented to you. After you open the door, you're greeted with the same really nice design for the interior of the door panel here, and it's cool because it actually opens up 90 degrees, so it gives you a ton of space if you wanted to load things in there, or if you just have car seats and want to get the kids in. And of course, you've got your window button up here and the button to open the door. Otherwise, nothing too exciting other than the fact that you've got a really nice giant sort of section over here to put some stuff if you want to put a giant cup or a bottle. And moving into the seats, or the back seat area of the Cyberbeast, you'll notice you've got the same really cool looking seats back here. The integrated headrest, the same piping and stitching. It looks very nice and everything is very plush and soft. There isn't a whole lot going on back here, but you do have this middle section that you can fold down by pulling on that loop, and you get, of course, some cup holders back here and a nice little armrest. Other than that, the only thing that's really interesting back here is the fact that you've got this giant screen that allows you to change, of course, the climate control, the music. You've got your own vents back here. You can play games, you can watch movies and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really entertaining if you have kids back here, and it's a lot of fun for anybody who's riding in the back. You don't have to feel like you're not being treated as special as the people in the front. So really cool. No one else really has something like that, a full entertainment system in the back seat. And you'll see there's a ton of leg room, there's a ton of headroom. And with that giant panoramic roof, if you will, or glass roof, you've got a lot of light coming in. So it feels very spacious, especially having that little white trim going across the door card. So very cool, but if you're not a fan of simplicity, this is definitely not the car for you. Okay, so like me, you're probably wondering, what's it like driving the Cyberbeast? Well, I have to say, first of all, getting in here, it does feel a little odd because you've got all this space. The window is so far in front of you, and again, you've got this interesting steering wheel. There's no gauge cluster, so things feel very different than in a normal vehicle, but it is not that difficult to get used to. Now, getting in and driving, you swipe your way forward to let yourself go, and you know, it drives like you would expect from a Tesla. However, I will say that one of the biggest and most interesting driving dynamic details about this vehicle is the steering wheel. And what I mean by that is it's a steer-by-wire system. So instead of the steering wheel actually being connected to the wheels, it's sort of like a video game. It sends a signal down to the wheels and tells them what to do, which means that to turn from one side to the other in terms of the steering wheel, all you have to do is turn it that much. There's no over and underhand and catching the wheel and doing all this stuff they taught you in driving school. You don't have to worry about that because, well, the minor inputs that you do allow you to turn the Cybertruck very easily. And there's also rear wheel steering, which is very cool. So the back wheels turn in the same direction or in the opposite direction. You also have rear wheel steering, which means that the rear wheels will steer in the opposite direction as the front wheels to help allow you to get around corners in a very tight way. And it is a little odd the first few times that you drive it because, well, when you normally drive a car, you don't expect to be turning that quickly, and the steering gets a little more, we'll call it tight, as you turn the wheel more and more. So it is a very interesting thing to it is a very interesting thing to get used to, but it is something that I think over time you probably would. Now, I think the biggest question here is, why would you buy this, or who is this for? Because chances are most people who buy a pickup truck or want a truck for work are not going to go for something like this because A, it's enormous, B, it's very expensive, and it also happens to grab a lot of attention, and it's not quite as practical as a dedicated pickup truck. Things like, you think the Ford F-150 or the F-150 Lightning or the Dodge Ram 1500, or any of the offerings from GM. Those are probably more conventional and designed a little bit better for the practical uses that you're going to need a pickup truck for. This thing just isn't. It's more of a statement piece. It's something that I think looks very cool, has some of the functionality, but is more of a lifestyle vehicle. Now, I did want to touch on one more thing about that, and then we'll go into the rest of the driving experience, because a lot of people hate on this thing. They say, well, it's really ugly, it's really big, it's a Tesla. And why would anybody want to buy it? I think the important thing to remember with the Cybertruck is it's not about being the best pickup truck. It's not about being the best vehicle in general. The whole purpose, in my opinion, for the Cybertruck is to show the art of what's possible. It's all about pushing the envelope. It's doing something different. It's being unique. It's showing that you can have creativity and you can have different styles and technology when you build a vehicle. And I think that is so special and so important for the automotive industry, because as we progress and things become more electrified and more mundane, we lose sight of what's next. What can we do to make things a little more interesting and cool and fun, and how can we change the way we design vehicles and change the way we build vehicles and the architecture for the electronics and the technology that we use in vehicles. If we don't keep pushing the boundaries, we're going to end up with the same stuff over and over again, and that sucks. And I think what Tesla and what Elon Musk was really trying to do when building the Cybertruck was to show we have imagination, we have the ability to do something that's totally different that nobody else has done, and it allows us to then integrate the things that we've learned by building the Cybertruck into other vehicles and make it better. So is this the perfect vehicle? Absolutely not. Is it the perfect pickup truck? Absolutely not. But I truly commend Elon Musk and the whole Tesla company for being able to produce such a thing. And that to me is what makes this so special. It's not, again, the most functional and best pickup truck in the world or vehicle in that regard, but it is very cool that we have it. And I think they've done an incredible job with doing something that really is going to be looked at, I think, in many years from now as sort of genesis for new design and new ways of building cars. And that to me is incredibly important. So let's talk about the driving experience for a minute, because when I first got into it, I thought, well, this is going to be very intimidating, but in reality, it's not. It drives like any other Tesla in terms of the throttle and brake pedal. You can do the one pedal driving. It's really great, and it's so easy to get used to. The hardest part, I think, about driving this car is just being aware of the fact that you've got this enormous vehicle and the windshield and the front of the truck is so far away from you that it just takes time to sort of realize where you are. It's almost feeling like you're in some illusion, something that is hard to just understand and wrap your head around. And the steering is the other thing that to me is very, not complicated, but difficult to get used to, because it doesn't work like a regular steering wheel. It's something that you really have to understand and play around with a little bit to get a feel for. But otherwise, it is really cool that you don't have to do that hand over hand motion to get yourself around corners. It's really easy actually when you're driving on a long swoopy road or you're going on the highway. It's quite easy to use, and it actually makes it more stable. And other than that, I mean, it's just very cool. You realize that you're in something special and unique, and everything else feels like a normal Tesla. So you get used to the fact that you've got your speedometer over here, and your rear window, or I guess your rear view mirror, is just a screen feed over here. It's a video feed. You don't have a conventional mirror because this doesn't look at anything. You have no window effectively back there. So some small things that you got to get used to, but other than that, the driving experience is really cool. And of course, because you've got all of these toys and things that you can play around with, you've got a lot of things to do in here when you're charging it up or when you're just hanging out in your Cybertruck. But the big party piece, in my opinion, outside of obviously the look of the thing and the toolbox and all the cool things that you've got in there, is that you've got some incredible speed. I mean, you've got 845 horsepower, which is a lot for any car, but when you're in here and you've got an electric vehicle that you can get that instant torque, the delivery of that 845 horsepower in the beast mode is just absolutely incredible. And I can't even explain it to you, but I'm gonna put it into the beast mode really quick just so that you can see what happens to my face when we go in it, because it really feels like your eyes are moving to the back of your head. So now we've gone into beast mode. I'm gonna let the cars that are around me clear off and move away, and you just put your foot down. And it was at this very moment that I felt like I was in the movie Spaceballs and I hit ludicrous mode and everybody was flying and hanging on to things. It was just a crazy feeling. Whoa! It's absolutely insane. And that wasn't even in the full throttle mode. I mean, we're in beast mode, but I didn't put my foot all the way down because, you know, we're still on public roads here. But I mean, you just put your foot down and you feel like you're going into hyperspeed. It's totally crazy. And that's something that probably won't get old. And if you're bringing passengers in the car, it'll probably make them sick, but it is very cool. So who buys this thing? Well, I think people who are interested in being on the cutting edge of technology, people who are interested in getting the newest gadgets, someone that, you know, really likes to have a statement when they drive around. You know, that's really what this vehicle is all about, in my opinion. And because it's electric, because you can still do so much, it's still somewhat practical. And it is something you could use with the family and, you know, drive around pretty much anywhere. You've got 3 electric motors in here. You've got all-wheel drive. You've got a really amazing turning radius because of the rear wheel steering and this interesting steering mechanism. So you've got some practical things, but I think the people who will buy this type of vehicle are really people who, you know, want something different, want something to show off a little bit, and again, be at sort of the cutting edge of technology. I know that people that are looking for a conventional vehicle will never look at a Cybertruck, but again, I think this is for a very specific audience. And for those people that do get it, they're in for a bit of a treat because the build quality is really nice. It feels very premium. The sound system is amazing. Performance is incredible. You've got a lot of really cool things about this vehicle, and for that, it's a very special experience. And probably my biggest criticism about all this is it's just so different and so unique and something that you'd have to get used to. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. I really appreciate it. And I hope you found it helpful. And for those of you that are new to the channel, I really appreciate you tuning in. Please consider subscribing if you like this type of content, and check out some of the other electric vehicles that I've done in the boxes that I'm going to put up at the end of this video. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.